Hi there! In today's video, I'm going to take a look at all the new features that OpenAI released in their recent DevDay. So first of all, now GPT-4 has a 128K context window. Now, I haven't personally used these very large context windows, but we can try it out. So I have here a PDF file that has 262 pages. So this is quite a long document. This is some sort of digital marketing guide that I downloaded from the internet. And then I converted it into a text file. So here I have it in the text format. So this is like 5,000 lines of text. And here I have a Python script that just opens the text file and reads it into a variable. And then I send a completion to the ChatGPT API, where I have just one user message that has the book text in the message, and then please summarize the above. And then we're just printing out the response and the total tokens. So let's see if this works. So if I run Python 3 summarize.py, then we have to wait for a while and it will then respond with the summarization of this 262-page book. And here we have the response. Now, this only used 49,900 tokens, so you could probably have like 600 pages of text in the PDF. But as you can see, it works pretty nicely. And also we can ask questions about the PDF, so apparently they improved this as well. So if I ask a question about it. So there was a mention in the book, I believe it was on page 172 or something. There was a delivery rate here. So they talk about having a 95+% delivery rate. So if we go here and we ask, what delivery rate does the book recommend? Then if we run the summarize again, then we should get the answer to the question. And here we have the answer. So the book recommends aiming for a delivery rate of 95% or higher. And again, we use a bunch of tokens because the text is so long. So pretty cool. No need to chunk any text or use embeddings or anything like that. Just paste it in there and it works. Now, another thing that they improved was the function calling. So they added an ability to call multiple functions at the same time. So with one request. So previously, if you wanted ChatGPT to call multiple functions, you had to send one request to ChatGPT first and get the function it wants to call. Then you had to call that function and return back the response, and then ChatGPT would respond with the next function. And then you have to repeat this as many times as you want to call the functions. So it uses a lot of tokens because you have to make this round trip every time. But now it can run multiple functions at the same time. So for example, I have here a Python script called home automation. And this just asks the user for a message. And then we give it some tools. So now you don't pass in functions anymore, you pass in tools. And the type of the tool is a function. And I give it a function called play song that will play a song. Now, this doesn't actually play any songs, this is just for demonstration. And I also have a light dimmer function, which adjusts a light dimmer from 0 to 100. And I have an order food function that takes the dish name and how many dishes to order. And finally, we have a send SMS function that takes the contact name and the message to send. And then we just send the message and the functions to ChatGPT, and then we get back these tool calls, which is a list of the tool calls that ChatGPT wants to make. So basically, they are the functions to call. And then we can extract the function name and the arguments from the tool calls. And right now, I'm just printing what function it called and with what arguments. So if I run this script, Python 3 home automation.py, it will ask me for a message. And I can say something like, my girlfriend is coming home for dinner. Order some food and set the mood. And tell Jack to GTFO. And I send this to ChatGPT. It will answer me, order food with dish name penne arrabbiata and count 2 and light dimmer set to brightness 20 and send SMS to Jack with the message, hey Jack, my girlfriend is coming over for dinner. Could you find a place to hang out for the evening? Thanks. And finally we called play song thinking out loud. So you could imagine that you could use this in some sort of home automation device like Google Home or Alexa. And perhaps I will build such a tool at some point, so make sure to subscribe if you want to see that. But now let's move to the next update. So what is next? We have the JSON mode. So as you might know, it might be very difficult to get ChatGPT to respond with JSON. Now, the function calling makes this already easier, but now there's actually a thing called JSON mode. So how this works is, for example, if I go to my JSON mode example here, I have this booksuggester.py. And basically, we just send a request to ChatGPT with a system message that says, you are a book suggester. Respond with a book title, description, and category in JSON format. And then I just add one message that says, I want to make lots of money. And then we set the response format to JSON object. And then here we just print the JSON response. So first we convert the message text into a JSON object, and then we convert that JSON object into a string. So to make sure that it's valid JSON. So if I run this, so let me go to JSON mode and let's run booksuggester.py. And here we have a book suggestion in JSON format, and it is correct. If I run it again, it should still be correct. But if I remove this response format, then sometimes it works, but not every time. So let's try and run this, and we got an error because it didn't respond with valid JSON. Now, in this case, what the problem is if I print this message, so let's run this again, then the problem was that it wrapped the JSON in these markdown ticks, so this markdown code block. So you can't, of course, parse this as JSON. You would have to parse out these markdown ticks here. But now you don't have to do that because it will always respond with valid JSON. And next up, we have these reproducible outputs and log probabilities. Now, this log probabilities has not been released yet, but the reproducible outputs has. So now we have a seed parameter that we can set in the request, and that enables you to make reproducible outputs. Now, they are not 100% reproducible, but they are more deterministic than previously. So let me show you an example. So I have here a seed folder and I have a story.py. So here I just send a basic chat completion to ChatGPT. Now, by the way, you have to update your OpenAI library in Python if you want to use this. And also note that they have changed this from chat completion into chat.completions.create. And also the response is not a dictionary anymore, it is an object. So before you had to call it like this, choices, and message was also message, and content was also content. But now it's different, now you have to call it this way, because these are all objects. But anyway, if I run this, so let's cd into seed, and I run python 3 story.py, then we will get a story. So by the way, my prompt was create a story about a boy and his dog. Give them names. So if we take a look at the story, we have here a young boy named Jack and an energetic puppy named Max. And if I run this script again, we get basically the same story. So we still have Jack and we have Max. And if I actually, let's put this into story1.txt, and let's then do the same with story2.txt. And let's open those in the compare mode in VS Code. So select for compare and compare with selected. So here is the difference. So the first two paragraphs are exactly the same, but then it changed a little bit the third paragraph and the fourth and the fifth. But still, we have the same names, for example. And that is because I set the seed here. Now, the seed just should be whatever random number. There's not really any information about how you should pick your seed. So I've just been using random numbers. And if I, in fact, put some other number here, and then I run this story again, then now we have a boy named Ethan. And we still have Max, but we changed the name of the boy. And again, if I now run this story again, we should again get Ethan and Max. And here we have Ethan and Max. So you can change this number and you can get different names basically. So let's try this one more time with another random number. And it seems that it wants to call dogs Max. But now we have Jacob as the young boy's name. Now the seed parameter can be useful in other cases as well, not just in stories. So for example, this is what I tried the first time when I started to test out this multifunction calling. So I created this function, write file, that takes in a file name and the content, and then writes it into a file. And then I created a run CMD function that just runs some arbitrary terminal command. And then I created a user message that is create a bouncing ball animation in Raylib and build it and run it. And then I add the functions to ChatGPT. So I added the write file function and the run CMD function. And then we send that request to ChatGPT, and then we get the tool calls from the message. And if we have some tool calls, then we loop through all of the tool calls, and we get the function name and the arguments, and then we actually call the function and get the response, and then add the response to the message history. And then this is something that I have to do here because there's something wrong with the OpenAI API. So sometimes the messages have a content that is none, and sometimes the message is a dictionary, and sometimes it is a message object. And the API does not allow the content to be none. So I have to change it to an empty string if it is none. So hopefully they fix this at some point, that it is not a problem if the content is none. Anyway, we have to do that, and then we just print the messages, and then we finally send all of the messages and the responses from the functions back to ChatGPT and get the final response. So what should happen when I run this is that it should actually write to a file the C code for creating the bouncing ball, and then it should call the run CMD function to run the terminal command to compile the program, and then it should run the terminal command to open the program. So it should open the animation directly. And it actually did it the first time I tried this. So let's try to run multifunction.py, but on subsequent tries it did not work anymore. So let's see what will happen this time. Okay, we did something, but as you can see, maybe you can see it is kind of a mess because I just printed directly, but we actually just responded with a regular message. And then it tells us how to compile it and so and so. And tool calls is none. So it didn't actually call the functions. So let's try this again. And again, we got tool calls none. So it didn't actually do anything. If we list this directory, we don't have any bouncing ball animations. But I found, by trial and error, a seed that I have here. And if I copy this seed and I pass it into the request that I sent to ChatGPT, so here I say seed is that, then now if I run this, it will at least compile the program, but it might not run it. So let's see what happens. And it did not run it, but let's see if it actually compiled it. And in fact, it ran the command. So let's list this directory, and we have a bouncing ball.c here, but we don't have the actual file. So what was the command it tried to run? So it tried to run CCO bouncing ball. Okay, so it should be GCC, of course. So this didn't work. So again, you can see here, the seed is still not super reliable. Now, of course, you should set the temperature to like a low number if you want reproducible outputs as well, because that also changes it. But let me just try this one more time, and let's see if we can actually make it run the command to build it as well. And let's see now. We still ran CCO bouncing ball. So it is not very reliable at the moment. Let's try to set temperature to 0.5, for example. And this time we did absolutely nothing. So we didn't actually run any commands. But hopefully you get the idea how this seed works. So you can try to find a random number that then produces a better kind of result. And then if you use that number every time, then it will more likely produce the same output. Anyway, let's go on to the next upgrade. So next we have the GPT 3.5 Turbo update, which just sets the default context window to 16K. And then we added the JSON mode and the parallel function calling. And I guess it should be better at producing JSON and XML and stuff. But then we get to one of the coolest things that they included in this update. So this Assitants API. So now if you use the Assitants API, you don't have to handle the context of the chat messages yourself. OpenAI will handle them. So you only send new messages to the Assitants API to a specific conversation thread, and then ChatGPT will handle the context for you. And they say that you can create persistent and infinitely long threads. So I'm not sure what they do in the background, but I'm guessing they might do some embeddings or something if the context window gets too long. Then I'm not quite sure if it will still have access to like older messages that are outside of the context window with some sort of magic, perhaps. Now also with the Assistants API, you can use the code interpreter through the API. And you can use this retrieval to actually read from files. So let's check out this Assistants API. So I have here a demo in my threads folder. So here's how the API works. First, we have to create an assistant. So we call OpenAI Beta Assistants Create. And then we give it a model, and we can give it a name if we want, and then we can add instructions. So this is basically the system message for this particular assistant. So these assistants are saved somewhere. I guess you can find them from somewhere in the OpenAI control panel or something. I haven't gone that far yet. But anyway, you create an assistant and you get an assistant ID. And then you have to create a new thread, and you can add some messages to the thread. Now, I believe these can only be user messages, at least at the moment. So here I add a message to the thread. How do I get started with Python? And my assistant instructions are, you answer all questions in riddles. So then when we create the thread, which is basically a conversation, then we get the ID of the thread, and then we can run the thread. So we give it the thread ID and we give it the assistant ID. So basically what this then does is it handles in the OpenAI servers the creation of the next response in the thread. And this works a bit differently than the regular API. So you don't get the response back from this directly. You only get this run object and you get the ID of the run. And then later you can retrieve the messages from that run. So let me show you how this works. If I go to my threads directory and I run this Python 3 create run.py, then this will create the assistant ID and the thread ID and then the run ID. Now I can then check the run. So I have this get run Python script here. So I can retrieve the run by the run ID and the thread ID. So if I copy my thread ID from here, and I copy my run ID from here, and I paste it here, and then I run my Python 3 get run.py, then we will get information about the run. And in this case, it says that the status is completed. So this means that we can now retrieve the messages from this run. So let's try to do that. I have here a file called getMessage. So you have to use this OpenAI beta threads messages list to list the messages in a specific thread. And by default, the limit is 20. So it will list the latest 20 messages. But in this case, I'm limiting it to 1. So we just get the last message, which should be the ChatGPT message. So if we put now our thread ID in here, then we should get the message from ChatGPT. So let's try to run Python 3 get message.py. And here we have, to start with Python, seek a snake's path, place your feet on its code and let its slither guide your way. So this is the response from ChatGPT. Now, that might seem very complicated, and it kind of is. It is more complicated than the regular API, but here I have an example with a chat. So here I'm creating again an assistant, and then I'm creating a thread, and then I just print the information of the assistant ID and the thread ID, and then I print just this first message, and then we start an infinite loop in which we ask for a message from the user, and then we create a message from that input into the thread. So we pass the thread ID here, and we add a user message, which is the message that the user typed in. And then we create the run with the thread ID and the assistant. So now we have the run, and it is handling it in OpenAI. So then we start another infinite loop. Now, I'm not sure if this is the best way of doing this. I couldn't figure out any other way of doing this. But basically, we just check the status of the run, and if it is not queued in progress or canceling, then we break out of this loop, and then we get the latest message, and then we print it out. So basically, this waits until the run has finished, so until we have generated the message in the OpenAI server. Now, I'm not sure if you can stream it in any way. I didn't see anything about streaming in the Threads API. Maybe that is coming later. But anyway, that's what we can do. And now, as you might notice from this code, we are not actually saving the messages in any like message history. We don't have a messages list here. We only add a new message with this messages create. So the context is handled in OpenAI. So let me show you how this works. So if I run Python 3 chat.py, then it created the assistant, and it created the thread ID, and then it says, hello, how can I assist you? So if I now say something like, my name is Jack, who are you? Then we will get the response from ChatGPT, and it will say, hello Jack, I am an AI digital assistant here to help answer your questions. And we can test now if it actually remembers the context, so we can say, what is my name? And it will say, your name is Jack. And now, even if we stop this script and then we do this, we don't create a new assistant and we don't create a new thread. And we just say that assistant ID is something and thread ID is something. And we replace these assistant.ids with assistant ID, which I wrote improperly. And thread.id is also going to be thread ID, and then we put the previous assistant ID and thread ID that we added here. So these ones. So let's take this assistant ID and let's take this thread ID. And if we then run this chat again, and now we say, who are some celebrities who have the same name as me? And we are in a completely new script, but we are using the same thread. So we get some well-known celebrities with the name Jack include actor Jack Black, musician Jack Johnson, and actor Jack Nicholson. So now we don't have to handle the context history anymore. ChatGPT handles that for us. And apparently it handles it better, so we can have a very long conversation history. So that's pretty cool. Now, there are more cool things you can do with these assistants. So you can actually chat with files very easily. So here I have a little script that creates a file to OpenAI. So I have a file.pdf here, which is this little 37-page book by Tim Ferriss. Or this is just a short version of this 4-hour workweek book. But anyway, this is just a PDF file, which I upload to ChatGPT or to OpenAI. And I set the purpose to assistants, so that the assistants can use this file. And it's just a PDF file. And when we create a file, we get this file object. And then we can create an assistant and we can give it file IDs. So in this case, we just give it the one file ID that we uploaded here. And then we can give it tools. And here we can add the type retrieval as a tool. Now there's also type code interpreter. So you can also give it the code interpreter ability if you want. And of course, there's the function. So you can add functions as tools. That's why they changed this to be tools and not function calls. But we give this the retrieval tool so that it can actually retrieve this file. And then we create a thread, and we just print the information, the file ID, the assistant ID, and the thread ID. And then we just start the chat, which is exactly the same code as before. Nothing different here. So we only change this part. So we only add the file IDs and the tools to the assistant that we create. So now the file has been associated with this assistant. So every thread with this assistant has this file. So if we now open this Python 3 chat with files, then we have now a file ID, which we uploaded. We have an assistant ID, and we have a thread ID. So if I now say, who is the author of the book? It will answer me, the author of the book, The 4-Hour Workweek, is Timothy Ferris. Now it always adds this weird source thing here. I'm not sure how this is supposed to work. I'm guessing it's like referencing where it is found. Maybe it's on the page 7 or something. Anyway, I can then ask more. I can say, for example, what nickname did Tim's mom use when he was born? Now, in fact, I did this same question with my own PDF file reader ChatGPT project, and it had difficulty answering this, and this is not actually the answer. I'm not sure where Oko-san came from. I can actually check. Maybe it actually is in the file. Let's search for Oko-san. There is nothing like this in here. So that is very interesting. It actually should have said tuna fish, which is somewhere in here. But the thing about this, I had problems in my own application with this as well, because it doesn't actually mention nickname in here. And it uses mother instead of mom that I used. So it might be difficult to find the area in this book that answers the question. But if I, for example, ask about this, it says that 1977, born 6 weeks premature and given a 10% chance of living, and so and so, then if I actually say, how many weeks premature was the author born? Then it will say 6 weeks. And if I ask, when did the author become a millionaire? Then it will answer me, the author became a millionaire in 1997, which is correct, because if we go here, it says millionaire time in 1997. So it can now answer questions from this PDF. And it was very simple to do this script. Now, I haven't tried the code interpreter version yet, but I'm sure I will get to it at some point. I actually created, before this update, already my own code interpreter. So I'm not sure if I should update that to use this API. But anyway, let's see if we have something else that we gained from this upgrade. So we have the vision. Now, I could not make the vision work. It just hangs when I try to run it. I might try to run it again if it works now. So basically, this is how it's supposed to work. So I have this function, encode image, which converts an image into base64 encoded. And then I just take this test.jpg, which is here, which is this tiger image. And then we just create a chat completion, and we add the message this way. So we give it the role user, and then content is actually an array. And it has one type that is text, and it says, what's this image? And then the other type is image URL, and then here we pass in the base64 encoded image URL. And then we just get the response. So it should work like this, but it just hangs when I try it. So let's see if it works this time. So if I run Python 3, what's this? Then now it actually works. So previously today it didn't work, but it says now the image shows a tiger standing near a body of water with a small waterfall in. And it says just this because I think I didn't limit the output. I'm not sure why it stopped there. Or is this a problem with my terminal? I'm not sure, but it actually answered the question. So that's how you can use the Vision API. So pretty simple. And also we have the text text-to-speech API. So previously you had the API Whisper, which can convert speech into text, but now they have actually text-to-speech, which works kind of like 11 Labs. I think 11 Labs has still better voices and just better quality, and their library is a little better because here I have to actually import play sound separately to play the sound, and I have to save it into a file. I guess you can do it somehow better to stream the audio, but I wasn't sure how to do that. So basically, we just call audio speech create with the text, and then we select the model, and then we select the voice. So the model, I believe, can be TTS1 or TTS1 HD or something, to like a high definition audio. And they have a few voices that you can use. And here we just stream it into a file. So basically we save it into this file, and then we play the file, and finally we remove the file. So if I run this, let's go to text-to-speech, and let's do Python 3 test.py. Then we will hear,
"Hello there. Welcome to the Unconventional Coding channel. Please subscribe and hit the like button."
So I hope you could hear that. My speaker is a bit far away, so maybe I will try one more time, just to be sure.
"Hello there. Welcome to the Unconventional Coding channel. Please subscribe and hit the like button."
So yeah, it works. Now I also created this simple conversation creator. Now I have a better conversation creator video with the 11 Labs API. If you want to see that, you can find it on my channel. But basically I created a function, play with voice, and it takes a voice and a speech to play. And then it creates the voice, and then it plays the voice. And then I have a function Mark speaks that speaks with the voice named Echo, and then Lisa speaks with the voice Nova. And then I create this completion where I have a system message, "You are a conversation generator. Generate the full conversation using function calls. Call the speech functions 5 times for both Mark and Lisa." And then I have a user message, "Create a conversation between Lisa and Mark. They are talking about Rust versus C++. And I give it the Mark speaks function and the Lisa speaks function. And then I just loop through all of the tool calls in the response, and then I print the function name and the speech, and then I actually run the function. So if I run this one, Python 3 conversation.py, then it should give us a short conversation between two people.
I think Rust is a safer language than C++, with its strict compile time checks.
That's true. Rust's ownership system prevents many common bugs in C++.
Okay, and this time we actually got just 2 function calls, which it does often. But if I try to run this again, then it should give a little bit more function calls.
I've been using C++ for a long time, and it's been great for system-level programming.
I've heard that Rust is gaining popularity for its memory safety and concurrency features.
Okay, so now it doesn't want to create more than 2 speeches. But I got to make a few more speeches at some point. Again, this might be something that you could use the seed for, if you can find a seed that actually creates more of the function calls. So the problem is that ChatGPT only calls Mark speaks once and then Lisa speaks once. But this was just a simple example using both of these new features. And let's see, did we have anything else? Oh yes, we have DALL-E 3 as well. So we can now create images with DALL-E 3 through the API. So let's try and do that. So I have a DALL-E 3 example, which is basically the same thing as it has been before. I think they didn't do any modifications to the actual Python library. But I actually haven't created images before with the Python library. I've only created them with PHP from a direct curl request. But basically we can say OpenAI images generate, and we give it the DALL-E 3 model and a prompt. A puppy drinking a martini on the beach, and then the size and the quality and how many images we want. And then by default it returns with a URL. So let's try to create a puppy drinking a martini on the beach. So Python 3 create image.py. And here we have an image. It took maybe 5, 6, 7 seconds. And if I click on this URL and I open it, then here we have our puppy drinking a martini on the beach. So that's pretty cool. And I think those are all of the cool new features that I wanted to show in today's video. Let me know in the comments what feature should I do more videos on, and did I miss some features? And also don't forget to subscribe to my channel and click the like button if you like this video. And I will see you in the next one.